Each of these topics also has complexities and sensitivities of a political, economic, social, cultural nature. These are complexities that are debated every year in bodies that have been established at the international and at the regional level, and of course at national level. And everybody tries to influence policies on these three huge agendas. Also, each of these topics has a very rich standard-setting background, both global and regional. Especially the human rights topic is actually the oldest, with a very strong normative background, starting from Article 1 of the UN Charter in 1945. And by today, almost 90 declarations and treaties form the base of international human rights law. The most recent addition to this panoply of international legal instruments on human rights is the Declaration, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that was adopted in 2007, and after about 25 years of negotiations between states, indigenous peoples, as well as among states, through the intermediary of the UN. And this declaration has actually created tremendous advances in human rights law, including through the recognition of group human rights. The declaration stands on 3 columns: on the right to self-determination, the right to lands, territories and resources, and cultural rights. This historic document does not establish new rights, but codifies international law as it is found in other instruments, and also including, of course, the ILO Convention 169 on indigenous and tribal peoples. Environmental conservation issues also have a very rich international standard-setting background. Just to mention 2 instruments here, starting from 1972, the Stockholm Declaration recognizes that man has a fundamental right to freedom, equality, and adequate conditions in an environment of equality that permits a life of dignity and well-being, and he bears a solemn responsibility to protect and improve the environment for present and future generations. And we have, of course, the Convention on Biological Diversity adopted in 1992 that addresses the rights and interests of indigenous peoples. It stipulates in Article 8J that states shall preserve and maintain the knowledge, innovations, and practices of indigenous and local communities, embodying traditional lifestyles relevant to the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity, promote their wider application with the approval and involvement of the holders of such knowledge, innovations, and practices, and encourage the equitable sharing of the benefits arising from the utilization of such knowledge, innovations, and practices. And of course, more recently, we have the adoption of the Nagoya Protocol, we have the inclusion of indigenous peoples' rights in climate change debates and in the Rio +20 outcome. Now we should add another huge agenda to this, which is the International Development Agenda, which has also tried to combine and address the 3 broad agendas that are part of our panel today. This has given birth to the concepts of sustainable human development, to the human rights approach to development, and to development with culture and identity. This latter concept has been pioneered by the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. In other words, at the level of the UN system, the intersection among these 3 important agendas has produced a tremendous interdisciplinary effort in the last 10 years. This effort is in 3 directions. 1, to combine the concepts based on the international normative framework. Number 2, to issue operational practical guidelines on how to implement these concepts. And last but not least is capacity building of all parties concerned on the methodologies of implementation of these 3 areas. And we have had UN operational guidelines that have been created on the human rights-based approach to development and on indigenous peoples' rights. These 3 strong human rights agenda, these three strong agendas, it is no secret to anyone, intersect, but also at times have created tensions and clashes. It is therefore especially welcome that in order to promote better understanding of policy solutions that are constructed within the conservation movement, there has been the Conservation Initiative on Human Rights, a consortium of international conservation organizations that seek to promote, to improve the practice of conservation by promoting integration of human rights in conservation policy and practice. And it's actually this consortium that is organizing the workshop of today. The UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which includes in its mandate human rights, environment, development, culture, and education, is being uniquely placed to address the intersection of these areas and to promote a dialogue between indigenous peoples and conservation organizations, especially in terms of what we call the participation gap. In other words, the lack of participation or lack of adequate participation of indigenous peoples and lack of free, prior, and informed consent in programs of conservation that are led by conservation organizations and by governments. Having observed personally the trajectory in this complex relationship, as I was chief of the Secretariat of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, I am particularly pleased to see today that at this World Conservation Congress we are having a dialogue among indigenous leaders, human rights experts, and leadership of conservation organizations. And I also welcome the establishment late last year by IUCN of the Specialist Group on Indigenous Peoples, Customary Law, and Human Rights. So our panel today is inspired by a key theme of the Congress, which is a blueprint for action. And through this theme, participants are being asked to put aside differences and work together to provide the means and mechanisms for good environmental governance, engaging all parts of society to share both responsibilities and benefits of conservation. So this dialogue today wants to contribute to a shared understanding of how human rights, indigenous people's rights, equity, and good governance underpin effective conservation, and how diverse constituencies can work together towards common goals for sharing nature's benefits fairly and equitably. This workshop will promote discussion about ways and means to advance the objective of strengthening participation of indigenous peoples and other local stakeholders in conservation decision-making, and also make some suggestions for practical collaboration among the various parties. So with us to discuss the topic I will be asking, in fact, in order to be briefer, I will be asking each of our participants to make an opening statement of 3-4 minutes, and then we are going to conduct our business as a discussion, and we will be sitting really behind that table. So we hope that when each person comes here to say hello, 3-4 minutes, you will be able to see their faces very well, and then we will sit down and be speaking from the table and create a conversation atmosphere. So I would like to ask first to come to this podium Mr. Ramiro Bazin, who is a Mayan leader from Guatemala, from the Xochitl Indigenous Organization, as well as a member of the Indigenous Advisory Council of Conservation International.
Gracias, buenas tardes a todos, a los de la invitación y a los organizadores. Me honra estar en la mesa con los líderes indígenas como de conservación, abordando este tema muy importante que nos tiene hoy acá, que es el tema de la conservación de los recursos naturales y los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Es importante hacer este llamado y hacer esta discusión porque el tema de los pueblos indígenas y conservación de recursos naturales no siempre se ha llevado de la mano. Hemos visto que los procesos de conservación que se han venido desarrollando a nivel de la región, ¿sí?, a nivel global, han desconocido muchas veces los derechos de los pueblos. Pero esto ha sido un proceso de evolución que ha ido cambiando. Nos alegra, digamos, que ya los procesos de conservación, no solo a nivel local, nacional e internacional, estén reconociendo estos derechos de pueblos indígenas. Estén avanzando con reconocer tres puntos concretos que quiero plantear. Uno, estén reconociendo ese modelo de conservación que tienen los pueblos indígenas, pero al mismo tiempo que los pueblos indígenas estén reconociendo también el aporte que se da a todo este proceso de conservación de los recursos naturales. Por el otro lado, tenemos la participación de ¿sí? Ya los pueblos indígenas están asumiendo la responsabilidad de dialogar y de hacer una discusión directa, ¿sí? A un alto nivel entre las soluciones. Es importante tener en cuenta que los pueblos indígenas han planteado por años este proceso de conservación, este proceso de diálogo, que la naturaleza, ¿sí? El equilibrio entre el ser humano y la naturaleza solo puede ser posible si buscamos una agenda común. Y esto es lo parte de este foro que nos trae a definir una agenda común entre pueblos indígenas y conservacionistas. Yo insto, digamos, a cada uno de los que está en la sala a que podamos ver este foro como un espacio que permita hacer ese diálogo, que nos permita crear esas líneas y directrices que nos puedan ordenar nuestra casa, que puedan ordenar nuestros países y que puedan ordenar este mundo. No es momento de plantear, digamos, si una u otra sistema es más alto o mejor, sino cómo los dos sistemas de conservación pueden aportar al mundo para que sobreviva esta madre tierra y esta madre naturaleza.
President of Conservation International, to make his introductory remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Buenos dias, nuestros amigos de América Latina. I'm very pleased to be here to talk at this event on such an important issue for the entire conservation community. CI has been working closely with indigenous people and local communities since we began our organization 25 years ago. And in 1996, we considered it important enough to codify our policies in a policy statement on conservation and indigenous peoples. Kristen and I always have an argument about who was first. Was it WWF or was it CI that produced the first policy statement of this kind? But in any case, we both produced such a policy statement within a few months of one another. In 2003, we created our Indigenous and Traditional Peoples Program to consolidate our efforts with Indigenous people. And Kristen Walker, who's here, has been the lead on that and headed that ever since it was created. And with the growth of that program, we also recognized the need recently to expand our approach to a broader social policy and practice issue, and keeping the core strategy of our work with indigenous partners, but really looking more broadly at social safeguards and human well-being in general. This became even stronger as CI changed its mission to focus more on human well-being, and that took place in 2009. So it became even more essential for us to incorporate human rights into our policies and processes, since they are such an important component of human well-being. We're very pleased with some of the programs that we've had. One of the longest running is with the Kayapo people in the southern part of the Brazilian Amazon. We've been working with them since 1991, and recently we're successful in creating an $8 million trust fund to enable them to carry out some of the critical activities that are really essential for them to maintain their rights to an enormous area. It's about 6,000 people living in 11.5 million square kilometers. No, square kilometers. I'm talking too much of the Pacific Oceanscape events. It's 11.5 million hectares. We also were instrumental in the country of Guyana in getting rights and land rights for the Waimai people. That's about 2 or 3 part of that country. And that really led to an opening up of land rights throughout Guyana. We have had an Indigenous Fellows Program since 2009, which supports, so far has supported eight fellows to enter into different aspects of conservation, with a heavy emphasis on climate change and the impacts of REDD+ on Indigenous people. We have an Indigenous Advisory Group, and one of the panel members with me here was a member of that. I think we were the first to have an Indigenous leader on our International Board of Directors, Megaron Chukaramai from the Kayapo people, and now we have Vicky Pauli-Corpus as our Indigenous representative on our Indigenous board. Now, the whole issue of the Conservation Initiative on Human Rights was already mentioned by our Master of Ceremonies here today. This was created in 2009 with the mandate to improve the practice of conservation by promoting an integration of human rights into conservation policy and practice. I'm not going to go into any details on that now. I'm sure others will talk about it as well. But this CIHR includes BirdLife International, CI, Fauna and Flora International, IUCN itself, the Nature Conservancy, Wetlands International, WCS, and WWF. I'd also just like to, in closing, mention a very interesting study that we just published a few months ago, Kristen, myself, and several other co-authors, where we looked at languages, human languages, as kind of a surrogate for human cultural diversity. We looked at about 6,900 different languages that still exist around the world. And to demonstrate how closely the Indigenous issue is tied with biodiversity conservation, we found that 74% of all the languages that are spoken on Earth are basically within the hotspots and the high biodiversity wilderness areas, which are the areas that we consider to be the highest priorities in terrestrial biodiversity conservation. And this includes the vast majority of those cultures, those languages that are spoken only by a few hundred or a few thousand people. So it just emphasizes once again how critically important and what a great opportunity we have to more and more link the interests and needs of Indigenous peoples around the world with the conservation activities that we've been carrying out for many decades now. So it's a real win-win situation, and I think it's going to only strengthen the mutual interests of what were two distinct communities in the past, but I think really are now becoming one community. So I think I'll end there and look over towards the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I have seen the map as well, and one does not have to even be a very big expert to see that where the languages, the diversity really coincides with the biodiversity of the world. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Claudio Moretti. He is from the World Wildlife Fund Network, living in Amazon.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. I think that we all know that development brings us some conditions that are interesting for everybody. That makes it possible for us to be here today discussing this. But at the same time, it seems obvious that there are, let's say, bad trends in what's so-called development that is affecting us both. The ones that do care for conservation of nature and the indigenous peoples and local communities. In the past, we had had difficulties and some collaborations that maybe were not with good awareness of what we need to consider to promote that. What I think it's obvious for us, and that was just mentioned by Russ, is that we have some common interests, and we have been putting a lot of effort in understand each other. I think that at least has been the position from the WWF network, in a way that we are now much more humble approaching those partners and discussing and trying to understand and learn from them much more than in the past. So we are not just seeing them now as people that live in areas that has interesting values and importance for the nature that we want to protect, but people that have rights and that have their own wills and their way of thinking. And that's what we are trying to understand better. And in that way, we have been trying to incorporate that in our way of working by defining in the highest level of our global network principles to deal with indigenous peoples and local communities. Principles that are not just to set the way of deciding we have a policy, but are supposed to influence all the projects that we develop worldwide. So it's not just a matter to have some cases and see as an opportunity, but it's a matter to revise what we are doing and check if we're doing right in all the projects. Certainly we are not done yet. Certainly there is a lot to be completed. What I think is that we are on good track. And I think that the position on partnering with all these other conservation organizations in this initiative is a sign that we are not alone on that. And being together, I think we can